more times than not, we would just be going to a location and we would like see protests and tear gas, and we had many times tear gas coming into the location, and for us this is normal life, but for someone coming from outside, this is not.
Hi, I'm Luke Sherveld. Welcome to another episode of Meet the Gaffer. Today we have the opportunity to speak with two folks who had a lot to do with the film Goodby, Julia and bringing that to life.
أكرم الحنية أكرم في جنوب ساكنين.
البلد دي بقت ما آمنة، خلوا بالكم.
أيها الرب الرحوم، نضع بين يديك هذا الأرواح.
راجلي طلع مع جتان.
أبوي لقيته.
أنت اسمك مين؟ أنا جوليا. ده دانيال ولدي.
صاحب الخادم ولا شنو؟
كفاية عمر اللي انقضى وأنا بخاف المنام.
راجلك وين؟ رد قال لي أبو راجل. عادي، الموضوع ده دفاع عن النفس، يعني ما في شيء.
زعل لو قدرنا to forgive and forget شمالين. Maybe we can heal and build a better home.
اشترط علي أخلي الغنى وما كذبتني.
ونيتي؟
كلنا كذبنا يا أكرم. قدرت تصالح الناس اللي قتلوا أهلك؟
So here I'm going to bring in the writer and director, Mohomed Kordofani, and also the DP, Pierre De Villiers. Hi, guys.
Hi, Luke. Thank you for having us.
How you doing, man?
And so now, just so we can set things, I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area, and Mo, you're where?
I'm in Bahrain.
And then Pierre?
I'm down in Cape Town, South Africa.
Excellent. All right. I'm wondering if individually you can first give us kind of a biography of where you came from, where you grew up, and how you got to where we are today. So I'm wondering, Mo, if you can start us out.
I'm from Sudan. I'm originally an aircraft engineer. Worked like for 16, 17 years in fixing airplanes. But around the year 2014, I started making films as a hobby. And I made my first short film in 2015, and then my second short film in 2016. And then I started writing my first feature film, which is Goodby, Julia, in 2018. And I quit aviation in 2020 to focus on filmmaking, and I started a production house in Sudan. I went back from Bahrain, where I used to fix airplanes, and I went back to Sudan, and I launched Clusium Studios with a partner, Khalid Awad. It is the same company that executed the production in Sudan. Then last April, the war broke out, so I had to move out again. It was just a couple of months after the shooting has wrapped. Yeah, I'm just traveling around nowadays, but I'm a full-time filmmaker, which is good news, I guess.
No, that's wild. So much there. And obviously we could spend a lot more time hearing about those different phases of your life. And so maybe we'll hear more about that later. Pierre, I'm wondering if you could fill us in.
I've always been based in South Africa. Studied for 4 years, jumped straight into it. We've got a service industry, mostly a service industry here. And it's been great to kind of like build and climb onto all the different departments and kind of like learn your way through it while still shooting the things on the side with your peers. And it kind of just organically grew from commercials to short films and, doing all the things. And then I had a lovely opportunity to shoot a fantastic feature in Lesotho called This Is Not a Burial, It's a Resurrection. And that was a fantastic collaboration. And in retrospect, an interesting way of kind of opening up my eyes and mind to like a different way of telling stories. And I think that kind of like led to a little bit more getting my name around. And I believe that's how Mohomed got to know of me. There was a previous Sudanese film that traveled the same year around the typical film festival run. So I think that's where we kind of like started to get to know each other. And now I'm just kind of like based in and shooting some commercials and with an upcoming feature. So we're good on this side.
Now, I wonder, Mo, the film Goodbye Julia that you guys both worked on is a very complex situation, the story. And I'm wondering if you could sort of give us the kernel of the film.
I always put it in a nutshell and say that the film is a look at how Sudan split into two countries back in 2011, but through a social lens. And by looking at a very domestic story of friendship between two women, one from the north and one from the south, and how this friendship is haunted by secrets from the past, but it's also complex and it represents kind of the relationship between North Sudan and South Sudan, in my opinion.
Right. And then adding to that the complexity of being in, you're talking about something that happened 10 years earlier than when this was filmed. Then when you were sort of finishing filming or during the ending of it, new issues came up politically in Sudan. Can you talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, since the inception of Sudan, we've been like plagued by war since 1955. So this is not new. For 70 years, we've had war after another. And actually, the North and South War is the longest civil war in Africa. The new thing is now, this time, the war has reached the capital, Khartoum. But the making of Goodbye Julia was always coupled with political events, let's say. When I started writing in 2018, this was the same year that the revolution in Sudan sparked, and the whole world knows about the revolution of Sudan. It was moving and fascinating. It was a peaceful revolution. So I was personally very involved in it. When we wanted to start the pre-production of Goodbye Julia, a military coup happened and overthrew the civilian governance. And that's the same time that we started shooting. It was during that time. And just when we finished, after we finished by, I think, 3 months, the war broke between the two military factions who together overthrew the civilian government. So, yeah, this is where I'm from. It's hectic, but I think I personally see this war as hopefully the final obstacle in the way of the revolution, because the change that has happened during these 4 years in the mindset and in the way that the people perceive authority has changed quite a bit. And I don't think it will ever go back to accepting dictatorship or military rule again.
So now, Pierre, you're introduced to this situation, this political situation, and you're reading a script and you're being asked to, come on board to this project. What was that like? I mean, what were the considerations there? I mean, one is creative, but the whole other aspect is like your life and like, yeah, just talk about that a little bit if you would.
Yeah, you kind of sum it up in a quite an accurate way. Like, we're trying to kind of make best decisions with reading a script and trying to understand what the story and the narrative and the emotions are, but also knowing that there's a technical and a real life element to this whole thing. Being from another part of the world, you do get, obviously you get news and but you get a certain kind of like slant of it. And that's always a difficult thing to pierce through that and trying to get like real information. So I definitely went down that route where I spoke to fellow filmmakers and colleagues, their friends of friends who shot in Sudan. How recent? What did you do? Where did you go? Like, what is the feel like on the actual ground? That was an interesting experience. And then you obviously also run in the background by getting to know Kordofani and Amjad. We had some 2 or 3 conversations up front, and it coupled with reading the script. So you kind of like asking questions, but there's also layers underneath it that you're trying to pick up on. And Kordofani, exactly like the face that he's got right now, very confident, comfortable individual. And that kind of, also brought a certain type of like trust, I guess. And we quickly kind of like latched on these themes that we both find dear and important and worthwhile. And it was a very easy decision ultimately. And it just flourished and just got more and more as we spent more time together. I visited the country once before for this pre-production period. Thought that was smart to kind of like, in a sense, get a taste for it, meeting the people, looking at the locations, but also then leaving the space, because it's quite an experience if you go into another country, regardless of whether it's first world or second world or third world. It kind of, your senses are heightened. So by leaving, you can have a very interesting kind of retrospective experience of what it actually means, and then in a sense prepare yourself for when you go back a week or 3 before principal photography. So yeah, I think it was a very good process. I'm not sure how you found that part, Mohomed.
Well, I have to say that I have very high admiration and appreciation for all the foreign crew that came during that time to shoot Goodbye Julia. As Pierre said, we're confident. We're always like, we know our way around. We understand the city. We know the ins and outs. But for someone coming from outside, I mean, more times than not, we would just be going to a location and we would like see protests and tear gas, and we had many times tear gas coming into the location, and for us this is normal life, but for someone coming from outside, this is not. And I came to realize this as we started shooting, and we tried our best to keep everyone safe and sound during the production. We actually rented a whole building so that we can keep everyone together and we can move them together and bring them back together. But this was, of course, before like a full blown out war that happened later. This was during the protests, and it's just the people versus the government rather than 2 military factions.
It's interesting, Pierre, you mentioned trust, and that's also what Mandy Ron mentioned when she talked. She's from ARI and provided, through ARI provided a grant for gear, but she said, that's what she's looking for in a filmmaker team, is that sort of underneath trust that you feel. So that's sort of the organic aspect. And I wonder, Mo, it's sort of in a perfect world, you sort of built up Closium Studios to be a local group of filmmakers. But if people aren't quite at a level that you need for a feature, then you have to go outside and bring in some heads of department. And so on the negative side, hey, they don't know everything about the local situation. On the other hand, they probably bring in a mix that is helpful. I'm wondering now if we could speak a little bit about equipment. So you have this complex story that you want to tell, just like you don't have all the people, you don't have all the gear. And so you need some participation from people from the outside. And how did that come about?
We had a few equipment in Closium Studios. I think the biggest one was the Panther, the dolly. And this is always very hard to bring from outside, but we had one and it's usable. And then we have a bunch of lights, nothing big, just aperture lights like 300Ds and a few other lights. I don't know the list, but that's when we met 2 years ago. I was looking for more gear to buy from the States and bring it to Khartoum, because I knew that this is a problem that we're going to face. And it's not easy to ship equipment to Sudan, not just cost-wise, but because it's very difficult for insurance to insure equipment that is going to a war zone, kind of war zone. So we knew that we will be able to get a camera and lenses, but for the lighting and the grip, it's going to be difficult. And we did really have difficulty. We had to push the shooting 1 week because we really got the equipment last minute. And the way we got it is through one of our co-producers, Al Arabi, who owns a rental called Ambient Light. And he's also, by the way, the North American distributor. And he agreed to send us, luckily, the lights from Egypt to Sudan to add to our list. And Ari, of course, sent us the camera and the lens kit.
And so just physically, how does gear come from Egypt? Like, is there a straight direct road, south to Sudan,
No,
or
it's
you got to put it on a boat?
flying.
Oh, flying.
No,
Okay.
it's on an airplane. Yeah.
Okay. So that's pretty straightforward. Yeah. And then once it gets to Khartoum, do you put it on trucks that are fitted out with shelves, or how do you get it from place to place?
We rented vegetable trucks, the cold ones. I think we had two of them. And we rented these two trucks throughout the production so that we can have somewhere to put the gear in and transport it.
Okay. So then, Pierre, can you speak to that a little bit about how you received it in the first place and then how you moved it around?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely one part of the challenges and the joy of taking on projects like this. You need to really get into the nitty gritty and engage with your fellow human being to understand what is actually about. And then how can we deal with this, fascinating challenge? And the communication was, of course, fairly important, and having to translate the stuff from English to Arabic and using Mohomed as a translator more times than what I would have liked. It kind of it was just a process. These things take time, but eventually you do get it all done. And like Mohomed said, we got our lighting from Egypt, and grips, a little bit of grips that we didn't have from Sudan also came from Ari Berlin. Otherwise, our two HODs, our Gaffer and grip, both came from Tunisia with a wealth of knowledge. And especially on the grip side, there was some lovely pipes that he bought and a few things that he kind of brought together, apple boxes that they made, also just to leave behind. And so you build and you share your skills, and so you kind of can be a part of something bigger. It's not just one project in and out. It's something that you kind of build on, as the years go by. So yeah, it was a lovely kind of process. And yes, we had a truck or two where not with shelves, it was just on the floor. And so it was kind of moved from one day to the next. It very easily just, get the things that we need and we go. Some of the cabling was fascinating, the way that they brought it all together. I'm sure Mohomed has got some fascinating behind the scenes photographs, and you get a chuckle because it's maybe not up to scratch regarding safety, but it sure as hell gives you light. It does the job amazingly, just like it would back home. So this kind of realization of not needing to always have all the things was liberating at a stage. It was a beautiful process.
And so HMIs and tungsten, or HMIs and LEDs, or what was the mix?
Yeah, we had a good kind of combination of all three. We mostly relied on actually, in fact, we kind of used all three fairly well balanced, depending on what we needed. Sudan weather is quite harsh. The sun is very present, but it is also next to a river, so there's humidity, there's clouds, it rains. So it's not like you can only rely on perfect blue skies beating down as you would imagine a desert-like country. So we definitely had artificial sources, and I do enjoy my light bridge reflector systems. So we use that in combination, some direct, some bounce, depending on what the world and the scene requires. It was a lovely kind of balance of, yes, keeping it quite realistic, but also allowing yourself to heighten it ever so slightly to bring a point across.
And did you have large fabrics to work with to take down the sun, or large frames like 20 by frames or something like that, or was it more like 12 by on down?
It was definitely 12 bys and down. There was no kind of infrastructure support to run type of 20 by 20s or fly swatters or something similar. And the shoot also didn't necessarily need that type of control. That's it very much lives in a realistic world, and we definitely scheduled around the time of day. And we got it for the most part right. But of course, stuff does happen. So you do shoot sometimes in unfavorable light. and then you make a plan in a different way where you work with negative bounce and you kind of also, deal with it. It's part of the joys of filmmaking.
And now you spoke in a clip that is on the ARRI site. There's a clip where you talk about a certain process where you can change for inside and outside light. So it's sort of an in-camera thing. And that would be helpful in that you wouldn't necessarily have to have your indoor and outdoor perfectly balanced. You could also use this sort of in-camera process.
1,000%. Yeah, it very much came from a place of wanting the audience to experience it the way that they would if they would walk and follow our protagonist, literally. And it's a seamless an unconscious thing that happens if you walk between from a dark interior to a bright exterior. It just adjusts. It's an incredible thing, our eyesight. And this variable ND Cinefade done by cmotion was a fascinating piece of gear to use and bring that kind of like visceral experience through, wanting to really be as close and as real time with our character at that specific time. We only used it 3 or 4 times to heighten a certain moment. We were very lucky to have that type of gear brought through from ARRI.
And now, is that something that requires a separate operator?
It was a fascinating thing to kind of test and get used to a little bit and do a few things. It works. The cmotion is a wireless follow focus system, fully fledged. So it has got a built-in. It's got 2 or 3 different functionalities that you can pull focus or your aperture, and also pull your variable ND from light to dark or vice versa. So it was more about the focus puller getting, using his brain to kind of pull focus, but also to pull down the variable as we travel. Later on, we actually gave it to the loader, and I think there's some cute photographs of these 2 grown men like standing and watching a little monitor whilst they kind of, one is doing this and the other one is, it's a fascinating little thing we do as filmmakers, right?
So for you, Mo, was that something you knew about ahead of time, or was it something that Pierre kind of pitched to you, or was it just something that sort of came up because as you were talking about the script and stuff, it's like, oh, you know what, this would be a handy use for this?
I'm a little bit technical, and Pierre can maybe confirm this, but I think I am technical. I understand more than most directors do about camera and light, because I started filmmaking using the camera myself. And then my partner in the company is a DP and also a producer, and we became friends because we shared this passion for filmmaking and for equipment and for camera and for all of that. So I know a thing or two about equipment and about light. I'm slowly starting to move out of that realm and become more interested in story and acting and all of that things. But I still do enjoy the camera part, and partly because running a production house that also has equipment, you need to know some of the things that you haven't. And also we do a lot of training. And again, I have to thank all the foreign crew who came, because it was not just shooting the film, it was also training these guys and working with the locals on all departments. I mean, in the camera department, Pierre had about 3 or 4 guys, including the focus puller. We kind of made a condition that to everyone who's coming from outside, if you guys want to be part of this team, the training is part of making this film, and it matters a lot to us that the locals get to share this knowledge and get trained a little bit, which was something I'm very proud of, especially now after the war. I see a lot of them who are already working because they were part of this film, and because it gave them some credit that they can use outside of Sudan, including the focus puller. His name is Khidir, and he's such a good focus puller, good AC, very passionate about what he does and very serious.
That's awesome. Yeah. Now I wonder if you guys could walk us through like a simple scene, say where the husband and wife sit on the same bench, love seat together, and how would you approach that as director and DP, and then communicate to your crew? Like maybe step us through that a little bit.
Pierre and I, we shortlisted the whole thing after he came to Sudan. When he went back to South Africa. We started doing Zoom calls every day. It was a daily Zoom call, I think from 11 to 3 or something, that we just sit down. He has this cool drawing his application on his iPad, and he can share the screen, and I can see whatever he's doing on my screen, and then we would just like draw the set. I was very impressed with his like drawing skills. And we just like we can do schematics. I understand the top view. He just draws, and we just talk about camera movement and how we want to cover the scene. We did this for every scene. I always had a thing for, especially for Goodbye Julia, to try to use a lot of one shots and have actors move within the scene, come close to the camera, or go back and or layer my actors in the scene. But I wasn't quite sure if I can pull it off because, again, I'm working with first-time actors, and sometimes it gets really hard. So we planned it in a way that we have coverage. But when we actually came to the shooting, I think after the second or third day, we knew that the coverage would actually take more time than trying to do it in one shot, and that actually the actors were really good. And I was very confident with the performance that they were given. So we kind of started changing a little bit in the scenes. I think it's like 50% was done according to the shot list, and the other 50% we just on the day we would like discuss on the best way to go about it. And this scene you mentioned in particular, I think it's in the film. It's one shot, but I think we covered it with two angles, the same scene, one close up, one wide. But I really like the way that the scene is covered, because it starts from behind the back of the neighbor, and then it's slowly reveals Muna as she's crying, and then it locks on Muna the whole time. It's a long scene. It's a dialogue scene. It's like 4 minutes or 5 minutes, and then the camera just remains on Muna the whole time, and it just moves slowly to the other side. And when the camera reaches the other side, there's a time when Akram goes back in his workshop, and we can see him in the background. So the camera is always covering whatever is going in the scene, but with a one shot, and I think it did the work.
Yeah. So Pierre, what's your understanding of that process?
Yeah, we like we spoke earlier, this kind of like realism and trying to kind of become as invisible as possible. This like one shot, very slow, creepy kind of like track with our grip, kind of just walking or pushing as slow as possible. In some ways, you're moving, but you're moving so little that you barely notice it, and you can then therefore engross yourself more in what the dialogue is and the performance, etc., becoming invisible. But before you know it, we're actually on the other side of the love seat, and our actor stands up and walks off into the distance, and you realize, oh, I've moved. I'm now in a wide shot, and I'm looking with her completely on the other side of the location. And that type of like exploration was very interesting for us. We kind of like discuss as it goes, do we still like the way that we did it in the shot list, or is there other factors that has happened that we've now learned and realized, okay, cool, maybe we should adapt this. Like Kordofani said, we started to get to know our actors well. And then of course there's other kind of typical filmmaking things about, oh, actually we only have an hour left to do the scene because we've got this thing at nighttime, blah, blah, blah. Fluid in that sense to a degree as well. So it was interesting to kind of discuss it on the day and allow for the actors also to become part of that and see what they bring to the table. And then I would talk to the gaffer and the grip in the background in between these moments where I see something, or, okay, I think we are going to lay this track. Let's start to build that along whilst Kordofani and the actors are working. And so you kind of like work alongside each other in order to still make your day, but also to allow for these like accidents, or sometimes it's accidents and other times it's just liberating moments. It was a good feeling, I'd say.
So let me just ask now, I think Mo told me that because like Habib is Arabic French, but his preference would be French. So now you're not a French speaker, even though your name would seem like you'd have some French background, but there was technical talk and then there was translation needed. Talk me through that a little bit.
Yeah, fascinating process and kind of like bridge. I've had some experience with that before. I did a TV series in Gabon, a French speaking for Canal Plus a while back. And yeah, it is incredible that you have to, how do you bring your point across if you have to use Google Translate over and over and over again? And then you do rely on these like 3 or 4 people that can, that has a very strong understanding of what the English language is, and then utilizing them. So navigating both yourself and also the people around you. And it's a great challenge. I do enjoy it. So having had that past experience, I kind of were a little bit more comfortable with this somewhat slower getting your point across and allowing for time to be used in order to bring this idea through. But I think we were all kind of very understanding and patient of what it requires. I didn't see it really as a hurdle. I didn't feel like it kind of like kept me away from it. It's important to know what you're stepping yourself into, planning and kind of working with that in mind. And then it kind of flows like any other set. We were very lucky to get Habib as a gaffer. He's an incredibly experienced and elderly gentleman, comes with a wealth of information, and he was very giving with his knowledge. And he was very comfortable sharing his skills, both with the locals and with the rest of the team, and not even in our department. So yeah, it was. I think it was. It worked out quite well.
So, for an example, you want the track to be here, in front of the bench, say, and how would you tell someone that?
This is also the beautiful thing where you really start to learn that we speak volumes with our body and hand gestures. Everything does not need to come out of your mouth. Yeah. Facial expressions, it's there's some universal kind of like language that that the military uses, that the form world also kind of like adapted, and everyone kind of knows what a dolly and a track is, and that English language does transfer certain kind of like words and equipment and phrases. So we got into a rhythm fairly quickly. Straight track, lie down over here, like it's you can imagine the type of body language and hand gestures that you would use. And then you kind of take it also with a pinch of like comedy. It's a great way of keeping the mood light and allowing people to also just like falter along, like you are faltering along, because ultimately we are all human beings. And we've come together to tell this story, and like all of a sudden, with that type of perspective, you bring an ease and a calmness on set, and that allows people to flourish. So navigating that on set was, of course, it was incredibly hot and it was frustrating, and we had prayers like 5 different times every single day. So starting and stopping scenes or rushing through them before the prayer starts. See how Mohomed is laughing there. It was an interesting thing to adjust to, but it becomes beautiful actually to be a part of it. And so you navigate each other and yourself, really.
No, I love that. Anything else, Mo, you want to add to that?
Just a funny moment I remembered. I was with my AD towards the end of the shoot. Everybody got comfortable. I was looking at it. This communication issue was big at first because even some of my guys don't speak English, Crucium Studios, and even the Arabic that Habib and the Key Grip and Taha, the best boy, the accent is a little bit hard for the Sudanese, and the Sudanese accent is hard for the Tunisians. And then they speak French, but these guys don't. So it was a little hectic at first, and we were worried. But at this particular moment, towards the end, I looked at my AD, and we were looking at these guys. They were laughing, and they were telling jokes. It was the end of the shoot, and they were telling jokes, and they were all laughing. And I was like, look at them. First they didn't understand each other, and now they're making jokes, and I don't know what they're saying, but they seem to perfectly understand each other. So I think with time you understand, if not the words, you have like your inside jokes, that things that happen through the shoot, so people understand, and then they have their own way of like joking and making the best of of their day.
I love that because often it's the humor in a different language. It takes the longest to sort of appropriate. So the fact that, that's happening that quickly, that's awesome. So what was the length of the actual shoot?
It was 34 shooting days done across a span of about 45 days. We usually do 5 or 6 days and one off. But then we had one location that had a problem, so we had to stop shooting for like a week and then go back again and shoot 3 days.
And how long were the days?
I'd like to say that they were the officially acceptable lengths of a day, which we're not used to. In Sudan, our shooting days can go up to 20 hours, 21 hours, because we we don't know what we're doing. This is a new field, and if you want to compete with other countries, like how we started is we do TVCs commercials. So, and usually all the big companies would go and shoot their stuff in Egypt or in Lebanon or elsewhere, and we wanted to draw that in and bring it to the local market. But we are slow. We don't know what we're doing. We take time. My guys, they slowly start up their day. So we knew that if we want to make it, we have to accept that we have to do more hours to give the same result that people outside give. So sometimes we do extra hours, and we were like gradually reducing these hours. But for Goodbye Julia, we stuck to, I think, 12, 13 hours a day because we had foreign crew, and we had to be very careful.
Well, it just amazes me all the hurdles you had. And then on top of that, you're not dealing with people who have really acted before? From both your perspectives, if you could speak to that a bit.
If you want to kind of delve into a world where there's not a lot of maybe expertise or, past knowledge, throw time at it. Because what was really beautiful, there was two different kind of avenues that Mohomed and the Sudanese team took up front, is to get the actors with them together and prep for quite a long time. How long was it? 3 or 4 weeks that they all were in the same country, in the same kind of time zone, in order to get together in one room and actually go through it. And that was really impressive and an incredible asset to have, the opportunity to workshop your scenes, question them, find them with the actors. It's a beautiful thing. It's not that you don't always have that luxury.
We've seen that case. I know we've seen it, but I don't know if it's enough to tell this is a guns case.
And on a more technical level, a similar concept is this idea, and I've never done it like that before, and I was up front, I was like, this is maybe a bit weird, but in retrospect, it worked out super well. This idea of, let's go and light it with our lights, with the cameras that we want to shoot scenes before we start to shoot, and we get a feel for what it actually looks like, a bit of a test run with the whole team and the crew. And we did that a few days before principal photography started, and we ran through some pivotal scenes and blocked it out with the actual camera and the lens and got a feel for what it actually will entail. So we got used to ourselves, but also used to the location, because a big part of the film plays off in this one bigger kind of mansion house. So everyone also getting there, knowing where to park, where to run the cables, all of those like little things that you find and that slows you down in the first few days or a week, now has kind of like been taken care of before principal photography starts. So it all comes down to like throwing extra time at it. You can get away with so much.
Also, I think there's a good thing about not having the experience is that you don't have reference to how things should be or how much effort you should put into it. You just know that this is such a big project for you. It is a big project for everyone, not just me. And this is the spirit that you get if you come to the set in Goodbye Julia. It's a big project for the crew. They're learning so much, and they know that this is probably the biggest project that they worked on, unlike being in a set elsewhere where people are doing this every day, and it doesn't matter that much to them. And for the actors as well, they know that this is going to be their big thing. It's a big opportunity. So people actually put double the effort, and still they don't know if this is enough or not. Am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong? So I think in a way this really pushed the making of Goodbye Julia, and without that spirit, I don't think we would have been able to pull through.
It's fascinating. You can easily come from a more jaded position and say, why even start that? That's ridiculous. But on the other hand, you get this amazing product. And what I really appreciate is that the producers, all the producers involved, and Arri as a corporation appreciated that and wanted to support that. Not just a story of a film, but a story of a sort of a community, the positive aspect of community coming together. So I'm wondering if you guys can tell me, what's the future look like? What's the future in Sudan? Yeah, obviously that's hard to tell, but of that community that you did have, what do you see in the future?
I don't know if the war is going to end soon. I'm not very optimistic about that. Probably going to last 4 years. And recently, me and my partner have been considering relocating the company to Saudi Arabia, where there is a flourishing industry there in filmmaking. It's marvelous. It's amazing. 5, 6 years ago, Saudi was so closed and almost illegal to make films, and now the country is supporting cinema and supporting filmmaking in an amazing way. So we're thinking of moving there. There's a few of our crew that are already there and they started working. So we're thinking we want to bring together the team and start making films in Saudi. We're going to focus on replicating what we've done in Sudan and hopefully bring some of the experience that we have in working in such a difficult circumstances like in Sudan, and use that knowledge or experience to do the same in Saudi.
So, Pierre, are you connected to similar projects, or are you, sort of coming back home and working on, more sort of commercial stuff, waiting for another opportunity to work on something that has, sort of deeper meaning kind of thing?
Yes, so it would be lovely to sink your teeth into similar kind of content and themes. The ability to talk about those things, it just feels at home. So I would love to get more into that type of space, and it'll be curious to see how we can kind of meet each other in Saudi Arabia and see if there's some opportunities there. But there's also absolutely a place for commercial work, and you learn in a different way and how to navigate yourself, and it's different resources, different approach of being creative, and so it's also, there's no real rush. Everything is important, and you just take one project at a time.
That's my world. I'm in corporate land, and some commercials, some sports, some doc. I really enjoy the documentary space, and feature land or movies is like way in my past. So I don't know whether that'll ever come back. But I just really enjoy hearing about this sort of community making against all odds, the organic aspect of filmmaking at a sort of base level, and this idea of training and bringing people up to speed and sharing. There's so much positiveness about that, rather than, here you often hear about the different departments having issues with each other, and it's just like it is just a job, rather than this is a human experience that we're sharing together and trying to make the world a better place.
We had our fair share of department issues as well. It wasn't like a completely the peaceful shoot, just like any other shoot. But I think the general feeling and the general spirit of everyone was, at the end of the day, was so wonderful. And we wouldn't have been able to do this without the generosity of the people who shared this journey with us from outside, and the people who supported and funded this. Arri is one of them, and Arri, this is the second time they support Sudanese project. The first one was You Will Die at 20, which was directed by Amjad Abul Ila, who is now the producer in Goodbye Julia. And that film went on to win the Lion of the Future award at Venice Film Festival. And then this film, Goodbye Julia, went to win the Freedom Prize at Cannes. So it's amazing that Arri is able to trust and to support such a project. And this trust is not just built on the reputation of Amjad and the script, it's also built on knowing that Pierre is attached to his shot. This is not a very Elixir Resurrection, which is a aesthetically a stunning film. And Habib, they were very excited that Habib is attached because Habib also done The Man Who Sold His Skin, which was nominated for the Oscar, and he's done so many films. So for them, they could see that something is going to come out of this project. We also wouldn't have been able to do it without support of so many other organizations. Like we have a lot of funding. Actually, the bulk of the budget of the film is not investment, is support money from different countries, from Saudi, from Germany, from France, from Sweden. It's a co-production, and it's a group work from all of these countries coming together to make this film.
Now, just to give one little thumbs up for the U.S., you did come by way of the State Department to Film Independent in L.A., Hollywood, for some workshops. Just maybe briefly, because that's sort of the beginning of the story in a way, maybe just talk about that a bit.
Yeah, this is another very much appreciated support that we received during the development phase of this project. That we were supported by Film Independent and the State Department to come to the States, me and the producer Amjad, for 6 weeks to do a residency with a development program. And they brought renowned figures from Hollywood to help us as script doctors, as producers, and some of them were directors as well. I met with so many. For like 2 or 3 days, they also allowed me to choose a scene from the film, and they booked a soundstage for us, and they brought actors. I actually did casting. Like I did auditions, and I chose my cast, and they brought a DP with an attic, Alexa, the full thing, and I got to play around with the scene, and it was one of the pivotal scenes in the film. It's towards the end of the film. It's the longest scene, actually. I got to play and then take the footage and edit it at home and just experiment, which is not something you get often. So yeah, Film Independent and the State Department were so much of a support. And when the film got picked up, it got submitted as Sudan's entry to the Oscars. Again, they supported the Oscar campaign that we did in the States, and they actually helped us with the ticket and accommodation for a few days, plus a screening at I forgot the name of the cinema, but it was all arranged by Film Independent and the State Department, which was amazing.
And now you also came up here to the Bay Area for the Sudanese group.
Thank you for coming to watch the film.
You know, I've seen you there twice, so that must be an influential group of folks as well.
Yeah, actually, the Sudanese people were the vehicle that took this film to what it is today in so many ways. The Sudanese community in San Francisco hosted us when we did the residency to screen You Will Die at 20, and then again they invited us to come and screen Goodbye Julia when we were doing the Oscar campaign tour. Not only in San Francisco, the same thing happened with the Sudanese community in Washington and in New York, and the Sudanese students in most of the finest universities, some of the Ivy League universities. We've done one in Harvard and at Yale and Princeton and Columbia, and these were all arranged by the Sudanese students in these universities, that they were so ecstatic and proud to have a film coming out of Sudan, because in the history of Sudan, there's like 9 or 10 feature films in total. So this is a big deal. It's not like the States. So people actually help you, and you get a lot of support from the inside, and you get support from the outside. And without that support, we would not be able to make this film.
So it's not just it takes a village, but it takes a world. Yeah. No, it's a great story, and it's a great reality, and hopefully that can be reproduced again and over. So yeah. Well, thank you guys. Thank you both for taking the time out of your busy schedules to share that, and I'm looking forward to sharing this with the folks that are nutty enough to watch me.
Thank you for having us, Luke. I was telling Pierre last night that you were so kind to me even before I made this film back then. And I told him I texted you and I was looking for equipment, and you were so kind to bring over your van to show me the different kinds of equipment that you have and what I need to do. And you helped me put together a list, which is so important to us back then. And we still use that list to compile equipment. And you're still supporting us with your channel. So thank you very much.
What was the food like on set?
I didn't eat that much. Maybe Pierre can answer.
No, the food was adequate. I think the thing that started to become a little bit frustrating was that it was the same on a daily basis. I really enjoyed the coffee. It was in these like small little like paper cups, and it was nice and strongly brewed, and you kind of like just chug it down. It was in some ways exactly what you needed, even in the heat.
But what is the base food? Is it like, do you have sort of a wrapped vegetable and meat thing, or is it?
No, it was most of the time it was plates that had either rice or pasta with either meat or beef or chicken and a little bit of salad, and that's about it. I think in the morning they have like these sandwiches that it's either I think tuna or egg or like just basic things to get you through the day. We didn't want anybody to die, so but but the food was good. It was edible.
Excellent. Yeah. Cool. And then is there anything like craft service? Like, is there something that you can sort of pick at during the day between meals, or is it just you get water and that's it?
There was always like small snacks that you can you can go and pick up from the catering area if you need to. But I don't think we had a lot of free time. We were always late and we were always behind schedule. So for me, I don't remember like going to that corner and eating. But I know that some of the there was some food you can just go and grab something.
And did you often have to change location in a given day, or did you usually just stay at one location?
Usually it's either one or two locations. Very rarely we did three locations. That scene you mentioned on the couch, after shooting that we had to go. This was one of the toughest days. I think we had to go to and do the river scene where we had to be somewhere and the equipment had to be on the other side of the river, and there was no bridge close by. So like we had to send the food by boat from one place to another, and people use radios to communicate. And after that we had to go again to this farm to shoot the last scene, which is supposed to be in South Sudan, but we made we used a farm to make, just because it looks like South Sudan. So that day were three locations, but rarely we do three locations, usually one or two.
Yeah.
Right, Pierre? Am I right?
Totally. Like, a big part of the film plays off in this kind of bigger mansion space that I've mentioned earlier. So we got into the rhythm of it in one location. And then when we started to, in a sense, knowingly you're going to start to run out of things to shoot in the space, you have to start to pair it with your locations that is maybe a bit further away or time sensitive things. It becomes part of this like puzzling little challenge to kind of like fit everything in, and you chop and change a little bit here and then you adapt it over there, and then the weather comes in. What about if we do this scene rather tomorrow, and maybe we swing this around, and so you are continuously switched on, and you work with all the departments in order to get this thing going.
This was one of the biggest or the most difficult things for the AD, is to choose tomorrow's location because it depends a lot on where the protests will be. So she had to go and wait for the resistance committees to announce if there is a protest, and if there is a protest, where is it going to be, so that she can plan accordingly our next day. So yeah, welcome to Sudan.
And then now there wasn't actual fighting going on, but was it ever an issue for sound that you could hear protests, or that you could hear, I don't know, everybody moving like with mopeds or something, that kind of thing?
No. Sometimes you would get tear gas. It travels with the air and it would come to the set, and it's very, well, it's a tear gas, so it's very hard to work when it's happening. But for sound, our biggest issue was the mansion that he talks about. This house was in a neighborhood surrounded by mosques, and each mosque would call for prayer at a different time, and you just have to wait for all of them to stop before you can start. And sometimes we would do it between the prayer calls, like let's do it, let's do it. So
They're not
yeah, we
synchronized?
did. No. Unfortunately, not. We've been calling for this, but nobody cares about filmmaking, but yeah, they should be. I think they should be synchronized so that we can just hear them. I think we had about three around the house that we can hear on location, so we just have to wait for all three to finish.
Yeah, that's a great anecdote that you wouldn't expect. I mean, it could be church bells, I guess, and that'd be the same. Yeah, thank you both for taking the time and sharing these experiences. It's awesome.
Happy to be a part of it. Thanks for the opportunity.
All righty.
Thank you, Luke.
Well, there you have it. A little window into filming in a foreign country about to erupt in war. Hey, thanks for watching. We'll see you again next time. How big was the crew at its largest?
On set, for the production, we had a WhatsApp group that had everyone, and it was about 67 people, including the actors, the main actors, the ones
Wow.
that they have names in the film.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot of people to wrangle.
Yeah. Yes.
Eh,
Managing the crew was harder than the creative part, I tell you that.
People and their egos.
And the AD, was that a local person?
The first AD is an Egyptian girl. Her name is Nadine. She had a very difficult job. It was the most difficult job for her. And the problem is that she came 5 or 6 days before we started shooting. And in those 5 days, she had to make a shooting schedule and understand everything, and then head on to in the shoot, and no mercy. It's a job. So yeah, it was difficult. But the guys who worked with her, the second AD, I had three or four more assistant directors. They were all locals, and they were actually very good. Rawaf, Khalid, and May, they were very good, and they helped Nadine quite a bit. And actually, Nadine had to leave before we finished, and then Khalid and Rawaf took over, and they did good.
And male, female, no problems? Like there's
On set, no problem. The crew is not a very accurate representation of the Sudanese community. This is such a liberal and open-minded and very nice, no problems, no issues.